What is up, guys? With the official 1.3 livestream having just passed, there's a lot of hype over the character Xiao that is going to be coming up soon. So I just want to make this video to let you guys know my upcoming team for Xiao to help balance his energy issues as well as increase his damage. Before we go into the team comp, I actually want to talk about the basics of Xiao so that you guys can understand better as to why I selected these units for the team. To save time, I'm only going to talk about the basics that affect what kind of team comp you're going to end up making. I will make another video that is going to explain everything you need to know about Xiao at a later date. Xiao is a Anemo polearm user, and for those that don't know, the only reaction Anemo can perform is the swirl reaction. Swirl can only react with Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, and Electro. It cannot react with Geo, Anemo, or Dendro. How Swirl works is that you'll see this Hilichurl will have the Electro element only on himself, and if I hit that person, it will consume that Electro on that Hilichurl there and spread it to the rest. You'll see this one lone Hilichurl no longer has Electro, but everyone else has it. However, if I use an AoE Anemo skill such as Xiao's Plunge Attack, it will allow me to swirl multiple times so that all enemies have the element applied to them. The damage dealt by Swirl is only based on your elemental mastery stat as well as your level and cannot crit. Even with 429 EM, my Venti's still only doing an extra 156.2% extra swirl damage. I really recommend that you don't focus on getting EM substats or main stats for your artifacts or weapons. If you accidentally do get EM, that's okay, and it actually can be slightly beneficial, but it's not a huge portion of his damage at all. Small basic tip before we continue on, Xiao's boss material is actually a boss material we currently do not have the game. It is going to be the Primo Geo Bishop boss material that's going to be occurring in 1.3. So I don't recommend that you go farm a whole lot of Anemo cube right now to prep for Xiao. I recommend that you wait until 1.3 and save up 420 resin if you're going to go up to level 80 because you need 26 boss material. If you do want to go up to level 90 or at least the ascension to 90, you're going to need 46 boss material. That's going to take about 420 resin if you want to go up to level 80, and it's going to take 760 resin if you want to go up to level 90. So before 1.3 servers go live, maybe look to save some fragile resin or some resin refreshes or maybe even some natural resin. Alright, now let's get back on track. If you guys did not know, Xiao's burst skill is called Bane of All Evil, which is going to be a stance change where he's going to don a mask, and it's going to allow his attacks to have larger AoE and more damage. It's going to allow him to jump a lot higher so he can plunge attack on his own without jumping off anything. It's going to convert all of his attacks into Anemo damage, as well as it's going to drain his HP continuously while he's in his burst mode. If you do change characters, this is the biggest thing, it's going to end his burst skill immediately, just like Klee and just like Razor. Another huge aspect of his burst skill is that just like Razor, he cannot generate elemental particles from his own elemental skill while in his burst mode. Xiao has a 70 energy cost burst skill at all levels. He's the only character that's going to have 70 energy cost, and it's going to be the second highest energy cost in the game, with the lowest being 40 and the highest being 80. So with this really high energy cost, the fact that he can't generate his own elemental particles from his own elemental skill in his burst mode can definitely affect his playstyle, equipment, and team compositions. The last important basic you're going to need to know is that Xiao's elemental skill starts with 2 charges. It doesn't mean that he's going to be able to use his elemental skill twice every 10 seconds. It just means that he's going to have 2 stacks available to build up, similar to that of Sucrose with Constellation and Klee with her elemental skill. Xiao can get an extra charge or stack of his elemental skill by getting his Constellation 1, but it's super not worth picking up because each charge is going to have an independent cooldown of each other, meaning you're going to have to spend a total of 30 seconds to get all 3 charges back. Xiao's Constellation 6 can also give him extra elemental skill charges, but that's a whole different beast and a whole different cost value, so I'm not going to talk about that in this video. Plus, these extra charges only occur in your elemental burst skill, and you can't generate energy from your elemental skill while in your elemental burst skill, so it's kind of pointless for energy gain. Alright, now that we covered the basics that are important to know for team composition, let's go on to the team comps. This is going to be the very first team comp I'm going to be trying when Xiao first comes out. I think this is going to be one of the best compositions to help balance out his energy recharge as well as his damage, with having little to no energy recharge, so that he can get his burst skill back to back to back. Because Xiao is yet to be released, I'm using Razor as a Xiao placeholder because Razor and Xiao basically have the same type of burst skill without being able to get energy in their elemental skill. And they're both edgelords. For this composition to work at best, you're going to want Constellation 1 Sucrose so that you can get an extra charge on her elemental skill, and then for Bennett, you're going to want Constellation 1 so that you don't have an HP threshold on his attack buff, because Xiao is going to lose his own HP over time in his burst skill, and he will possibly fall below that 70% mark. Although it shouldn't be too big of a deal, because at level 6 talent, you're going to be only losing 2.5% of your current HP per second, and at higher levels, it's even lower. And the moment you fall below 70%, if you are in his burst skill, it will shoot you back up past it anyways. As for official, you would prefer to have her at Constellation 6 so you can get an extra 2 seconds of Oz on your elemental skill and your elemental burst skill, which give you more particles, as well as you may end up taking advantage of the other part of the Constellation 6 passive, although it's absolutely not necessary for you to have Constellation 6 either. Alright, really quickly, I'm going to show you how many elemental particles you're going to get from each character's elemental skill real fast. So Sucrose, when she uses her elemental skill, you can see I'm going to get 4 there. She can actually get between 3 and 4 particles, but she often gets 4. And I'm going to show you Bennett's elemental skill here, where he's going to get about 2 to 3 particles every time, usually 2. And for Fischl, she's going to get 0 to 1, usually 1 elemental particle each time Oz hits. I'm not going to show you the full 12 seconds of Oz, but I will show you some trial testing I did. But before we get onto that, let me show you guys how much energy Xiao will be getting from his elemental skill. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but I'll try to slow it down for you guys. You guys see here, he did an elemental skill and he got 3 here, and you'll see right here on the side, he's getting 2. So he's going to have a variance between 2 and 3. Alright, so I did 10 trials of each character's elemental skill to see how much energy they generated from the elemental skill. The first column is going to be Fischl, then it's going to be Bennett, then it's going to be Sucrose. So Fischl did 7, 9, 7, 9, 9, 6, 9, 8, 9, 9. Bennett did 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Sucrose did 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4. And in total, they generated 82 energy for Fischl, 22 energy particles for Bennett, and 38 energy particles for Sucrose. So on average, Fischl's elemental skill gave me 8.2 elemental particles, electro particles. Bennett gave me 2.2 elemental particles, and Sucrose gave me 3.8 Anemo elemental particles. For the sake of this video, we're just going to assume that Xiao is going to have similar energy gain to Bennett, even though I see a lot of videos giving Xiao 3 elemental particles every time he uses elemental skill. Alright, now that we have how many elemental particles we're going to be getting on average from each person's elemental skill, I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about how elemental particles work. If you guys have not watched my energy video, please do watch it for the basics of energy and how to improve your energy gain as well. Alright, if you haven't seen this table before, this table basically depicts how much energy you get from each particle. So if you get a particle of the same element and you're on the field, then you're going to get 3 energy from that one particle. If you're on the field and you get a particle of a different element, you're going to get 1 energy from that particle. If you're in the party and the particle that gets absorbed, it's the same as you get 1.8 energy for that particle. If you are in the party and it's a different element than yourself, you're going to get 0.6 energy for it. Clear particles come from enemies that do not have a natural element, and after you pass certain HP thresholds. Different monsters have different HP thresholds, but they're typically at 50% and 0%. Some have it at 75 and 25 as well. Clear orbs and elemental orbs come from larger enemies. LE orbs are from large enemies that have element imbued already within themselves, such as big slimes and bosses. Clear orbs come from big monsters such as Minotaurs and Ruin Guards and large enemies of the sort. How much energy recharge you have is actually going to affect how much energy you actually absorb. So if you have 100% energy recharge, aka 0 energy recharge, you're going to multiply that 100% or 1 times 3. If you have 132% energy recharge, you're going to multiply that number or 1.32 times 3. If you were to get energy on field as the same element as yourself. And before people ask, there is no such thing as a sweet spot of how much energy recharge you need for a character. It really depends on what kind of gear you're running on your character, what kind of weapon you're running, such as a sacrificial or Favonius weapon, your team composition, and what kind of monster you're fighting, and various other variables. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the playstyle of the team so that Xiao could get his burst skill back to back to back with little to no energy recharge. So I know this looks extremely scuffed, but I'm just going to do this in MS Paint to help explain how this is going to play out. First column is going to be Sucrose, second column is going to be Xiao, third is going to be Fischl, and fourth is going to be Bennett. So these little dots represent how many charges of their elemental skill they're going to have. Sucrose is going to have 2 charges with C1, and Xiao is going to have 2 charges at C0. Fischl is going to have 1 charge, and Bennett's going to have 1 charge. This next row is going to be their elemental skill cooldown, but because we're going to be running double Anemo, we're going to get the Impetuous Winds Elemental Resonance passive, which is going to give us 5% cooldown reduction. So in actuality, this row is going to be their elemental skill cooldowns, and this one's not going to be accurate. This row right here is going to be how many elemental particles they're going to be gaining on average with their elemental skill. This is Xiao's burst duration, and this is Xiao's cooldown, but because we have the Elemental Resonance passive, this is actually going to be Xiao's cooldown instead for his burst skill. Alright, now that I explained what all the numbers mean, I can finally explain what the playstyle is going to be like. This is going to get very confusing, so feel free to replay a lot of the parts so you can better understand what the rotation is going to be like. We're also going to assume that every character is going to start off with their burst skill like you would in the Abyss. To start off the rotation, you're going to use Bennett's elemental skill into Bennett's burst skill, then swap to Sucrose and use her elemental skill into her burst skill, then swap into Fischl and use her burst skill, then swap to Xiao and use his elemental skill twice, and then use Xiao's burst skill. This parentheses is if you have sacrificial fragments on Sucrose and your sac frags procs, you do want to get rid of it so that you have only 1 charge remaining on Sucrose. The opening rotation is done in this manner so that Bennett can get energy to recover his burst, Sucrose can recover her burst, and then Fischl will put energy into Xiao's burst, and Xiao will generate energy to recover his burst. Because Xiao can get energy with his elemental skill as long as he's not in his burst skill when the elemental skill is used. Xiao will not be generating energy from any of this part of the opening sequence, but he will be getting some energy from Fischl. We're just going to assume that she's going to give about 6 energy particles because this whole sequence right here will take a few seconds. But both of these elemental skills should go into recovering his burst skill. Both these elemental skills being shoved into Xiao should give him about 6.6 energy times 2, which is going to be about 13.2 energy. Add on the other 6 energy you get from Fischl, and that'll be 19.2 energy. Since Xiao's burst costs 70 energy and we just generated 19.2 energy, we need to get 50.8 energy afterwards. Xiao's elemental burst lasts 15 seconds, so Sucrose's elemental skill charge that she had missing should recharge by the time the burst is over. Xiao, who had both charges used up in the initial rotation, should recover 1 by the time the burst is over, and by the time you swap through all your characters and come back to Xiao, 18 seconds should have passed, and you only need 19 seconds in total to recover both charges. So both charges should be back up by the time you finish using all your skills and swapping through all your characters, and you're back on Xiao. So now for the other rotation you'll be doing after Xiao's initial burst and the initial rotation. You'll be starting off with Bennett's elemental skill, and if you have his burst skill, feel free to use it, but then you'll be going to Fischl's skill, but if you have her burst skill, use that instead. Then you'll be going over to Sucrose to use her skill 2 times, then immediately swap into Xiao to use his skill 2 times. Now, if you have sack fragments on Sucrose and it does proc, feel free to use your elemental skill here. You will have to do some weird shenanigans like swapping to Xiao and swapping back to Sucrose to be able to give Xiao his energy, or you can just let Xiao get off-field, same element energy. Alright, now that you guys saw the rotation, let's go back to the energy math. You're going to use 2 Sucrose elemental skills, which is going to give you 22.8 energy, and then you're going to use 2 Xiao skills, which is going to give you 13.2 energy, and you're going to have a little bit of Fischl's elemental skill because it's going to be part way here. I made a bit of a mistake here, but luckily I caught it. So after you use Fischl's skill, you're going to have about 2 seconds to use Sucrose's skills and about 2 seconds to use Xiao's skills. This will be 2 seconds or 2 potential energy off-field and 2 energy on-field for Xiao from Fischl. Because of this, we're just going to assume that Fischl is going to give only about 2 energy before Xiao's burst is ready again. Obviously, if Xiao's burst is not ready, you're going to get more and more energy as time goes on from Fischl's elemental skill. And then you're going to get Bennett's off-field energy with different elements, so that's only going to give you 1.32 energy. Now, if we bring up our handy dandy calculator and add up all those energy numbers, we're going to get about 39.32 energy. If you remember, we were missing 50.8 energy, and if we minus 39.32 from it, we're going to be missing about 11 to 12 energy. Now, to get the remaining energy you need to get Xiao's burst again, there's going to be multiple ways, but the main way you're going to get it is from the neutral particles that you're going to get from killing monsters for hitting their HP thresholds. Within 2 rotations as well as a Xiao burst, you should be able to get at least like 5 or 6 particles or maybe like 2 clear orbs. Plus, Fischl's elemental skill will continue to give energy to your Xiao until his burst is ready. And if that's somehow not enough energy, you could always use Favonius Sword on Bennett or Sacrificial Sword. You could always use Sacrificial Fragments on Sucrose or Favonius Codex on Sucrose. And if you're somehow still missing energy, you definitely messed something up in the rotation, but just try to get some energy recharge on your substats on your artifacts, such as this helmet and this flower. Now, if you are running content that's going to take more than 2 rotations and 2 Xiao bursts to kill, this is going to be a little bit of a doozy, but it is very common in the Abyss. So the rotation you're going to end up running is going to be Bennett's elemental skill into his burst skill if you have it, into Fischl's burst skill if you have it. If you don't have Fischl's burst skill, you are going to have to go and redo the entire rotation, and in the initial rotation, you're going to go skill into burst into skill for Fischl. The reason for this is because you're going to have 23.75 second cooldown, and if you do have C6, you'll have a 12-second duration, and then afterwards you're going to do her burst skill for another 12 seconds, and after that's over, you're going to have your elemental skill up again for Fischl. The reason why you just don't always go skill burst skill is because if you go skill first, you won't be generating any elemental energy for your burst skill because your burst skill will be full already and not used. Now let's continue on with the rotation. If you do have Sucrose's burst, use it, but if you don't, just proceed with the elemental skill and switch immediately into Xiao to use both of his elemental skills, and if you have his burst, use it. If not, you're going to have to do some shenanigans. Alright, now back to the energy math once again. You'll get 1.32 energy here, and you'll get about 2 energy here, and 11.4 energy from Sucrose's elemental skill here, and 13.2 energy from Xiao's elemental skills here. So if you recall, Fischl only gave us 2 energy in the last rotation, but Fischl will continually be giving energy while Xiao is in his burst skill, so we're going to take the other 6 energy and add it to this rotation. Adding up all those numbers only gives you 33.92 energy. Xiao's burst does cost 70 energy, and if you take that energy away from the total energy you need, you'll need 36.08 more energy. As you can tell, that's going to be a very big doozy. It's very, very unlikely that you're going to be able to recover all of that energy through clear or neutral particles from HP thresholds. If you do have Sacrificial Fragments on Sucrose, it can definitely help, and Favonius Sword on Bennett, it could definitely help as well. But ultimately, you're going to need energy recharge if your fights are going to go past 30 seconds or 2 Xiao bursts and 2 or 3 rotations. This is the reason why Pioneer testers were saying Xiao's damage is okay, but he does have severe energy issues. So if you do run into this issue, an energy recharge and Sacrificial Favonius weapons and clear clear. Neutral particles are not enough. You can always drop Bennett for Gene. If you don't have Gene, you could always drop Fischl for another Anemo user such as Venti or the Anemo MC. One benefit of running the Anemo MC is that he's free and his constellations are free, and at Constellation 6, you do get 20% Anemo resistance down when you hit a target with his burst skill. But I'm pretty sure this resistance down is only in effect while they're taking active damage from the Gust Surge burst skill. So if you're pairing this with Xiao, Xiao will have to chase targets that are getting carried by the burst skill, or you're gonna have to pin people against the wall, or it's gonna be a big target and the MC's burst skill is only gonna briefly come in contact with the big target before it passes through them. Another issue is you're gonna wanna hold down the elemental skill to get the max amount of elemental particles. You'll see here how long it takes to hold it down, but if you do hold it down, it will give you 3 to 4 elemental particles. Venti's elemental skill will give you 3 particles, and Gene's elemental skill will give you 2 to 3 particles. If you do only tap the elemental skill of the main character, you do only generate 2 particles. One final issue with the main character is that he still has this energy bug that was fixed for most characters in 1.1, but if you use his elemental skill and dash right away, you don't generate any energy particles. Regardless of whatever team comp you make, you are going to want to use Xiao with another Nemo user, and other alternative supports is that you could use Zhongli in place of Bennett. If you do use Zhongli in place of Bennett, you will probably get more energy from his pillar as long as people are staying near his pillar, and his resistance down will probably give you more damage than Bennett's attack up, because Bennett, being the only power unit, will probably not have his burst back to back to back unless you are running Sacrificial Sword or a lot of energy recharge or Favonius Sword. You could always run Albedo, but keep in mind the energy recharge is going to be very random. With every 2 seconds, you're going to gain 0 to 1 energy with every Transient Blossom, similar to Zhongli, generating 0 to 1 energy per pulse. And if you're running Albedo and you're doing single target fights, you probably don't want to run Bennett as your healer because you're not going to be able to swirl anymore unless you infuse the Pyro with a Sucrose Burst or a Venti Burst. If you are going to use another healer, just keep in mind Chi-Chi, Barbara, and Noelle do not generate any energy with their elemental skill. You could always go the alternative route and completely ignore the swirl reaction and just run Albedo plus Zhongli if you somehow have both of them along with Xiao to get double Geo Resonance as well as double Anemo Resonance. If you do that, you are going to want a lot of energy recharge on your Xiao to help offset the random energy gain that you're going to get from Albedo plus Zhongli. You could also always run Xiangling in place of Fischl, but keep in mind Guoba does miss a lot of times, and he only does generate 1 energy particle per breath hit, so a maximum of 4 breaths to give you a maximum of 4 energy particles over 12 seconds. And if you do pair it with Bennett, you are going to have double Pyro Resonance, but you are only going to have the Swirl Pyro reaction. It is not going to allow you to have any other reactions as you would like with Fischl plus Bennett for possible overloads and swirls. Another combination you could try is Ganyu plus Bennett. If you do infuse Bennett's Pyro with Sucrose or Venti's Burst skill, and then follow it up with Ganyu's Burst, you will create some devastating melts in conjunction with Xiao's plunge damage. If you do want to replace Fischl for Ganyu for this composition, I definitely recommend you run Ganyu with Sacrificial Bow if you have it, because her elemental skill will only generate 2 cryo particles when you first cast it, and 2 cryo particles when it explodes. Mona could definitely be an interesting choice to replace Fischl, however her elemental skill will only generate about 3 hydro particles every 12 seconds, but her burst potential is very high with Bennett and Xiao's plunge spam. And lastly, Xingqiu. You could pair Xingqiu with Zhongli or Xingqiu with Bennett. Xingqiu's elemental skill does generate a lot of hydro particles, especially if you do have Sacrificial Sword, and the cooldown is pretty accurate with Xiao's burst cooldown, but Xingqiu's burst skill only fires swords if you do a normal attack with the character on field. So because a plunge attack is not a normal attack, your rotation is going to look something like this, where you're going to use Xingqiu's burst skill, jump, plunge, auto, jump, plunge, auto, jump, plunge, auto. That's not going to be very fun, and it's going to be a little bit scuffed. If you do enjoy that style, maybe that's for you. I did want to talk about the character's gear when supporting Xiao, because it's not always going to be the same conventional build, as well as I did want to go a little bit more in depth with the alternative team compositions, but this video is getting quite long, so I will be ending the new information here, but I will be doing a TLDR for the most important parts of this video that you should be taking away to understand how to build a good Xiao team composition. So TLDR, Xiao's burst skill will be a very high cost of 70 energy, and his elemental skill will not generate any energy while his burst skill is active. All of his damage will be converted to Anemo damage, so he will be able to do swirls like crazy. However, swirl is the only reaction he's going to be able to do. The team I plan to initially use with Xiao is going to be Sucrose, Xiao, Fischl, Bennett. This team will allow me to use Xiao's burst skill at least 2 times in a row, if not more. I plan to use a lot of Sacrificial and Favonius weapons on my supports, Favonius Sword on Bennett, and Sacrificial Fragments on Sucrose. If I do fights with Xiao and they take longer than 2 bursts and I can't get the other burst soon after, I'll probably put a 3rd Anemo user such as Gene or Venti or Anemo MC on the team. And lastly, there are going to be plenty of other alternative supports that you can end up using. It's just going to be a matter of playstyle as well as what type of content you're going to be running. Alright, that's going to be the end of the video. If you watched the whole video, you're an absolute legend. Please do consider leaving a like, comment down below what other type of Xiao videos you'd like me to make, or if you'd like me to go more in depth about a certain topic or a certain team composition. Subscribe for more Genshin related content. Follow me on Twitch if you guys want to have live discussions on Genshin Impact. Join my Discord if you want to be part of our Genshin Impact community. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you guys want to have short, quick updates about the game, as well as leaks and primo gem codes and etc. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!